Hello, and welcome back to a chill junk journaling session with Flanzella. That's me, aka Leah, a collage artist. It's been a while since I used my junk journal, and I'm really excited to get back into it. This is often the snuggly little place I like to turn to when I'm looking to be inspired. Today, we're looking at some really interesting scraps here, and I hope to make some abstract floral collages. With summer in full swing, I've been very inspired by florals in my artworks. Today, I wanted to take you on a little adventure of trying a new collage technique that I haven't really done. For those of you who are new here, this is a safe place where I can just create. I like to cut and glue all in one session, and it leads to really experimental, different things going on. I always learn something new when I'm using this journal. So today I'm looking for things that inspire me or look like flowers. For example, I loved this piece of coral and thought it would make a perfect substitute for baby's breath. After dumping so much time into learning about copyright and collage, it was time for me to try something that I felt a little bit safer doing, let's say. If copyright is holding you back from creating something, this is a perfect thing to do. I'm going to try as many methods as possible to create little shapes that will represent flowers, whether this is cutting them out, ripping them, trying to use other shapes that were already cut out. There's just so many different things to do, and this exercise will hopefully push me to think outside the box and think abstractly, because making abstract collages in this way is definitely something I've never done. The idea is that every cut will be like a brushstroke on the canvas. I'm hoping it'll be extremely abstract, and I'm really excited to see where this goes. I truly have hit a point of no return when it comes to burnout and work, and it's just something that I just can't change right now, which really sucks. But by the time that you're watching this, I'll likely already be on my vacation where I can get a break and hopefully recharge. But when in doubt, I love turning to my little junk journal. I was reflecting back and I realized that I've actually never really been burnt out in my entire life, until now that is. My entire career, I've been super lucky to be able to just quit and move on to another job. I'm not saying I never had the effect of burnout for sure, but I never had it in a way where it was truly affecting my ability to create in my personal time. In my past, I've done a lot of freelance work, and that allowed me to leave before it got too bad. And when I was burnt out afterwards, I had the time to just sit around and restructure my life every single time. To feel better, I've been really pushing myself to go to art galleries, events, anything that's going to inspire me. And all of this has just led to this huge inspiration when it comes to my art. I don't know if anyone else has this, but sometimes when I'm feeling really creative, I dream of color palettes and like composition styles. It's really interesting, but I've been having those a lot more often just by attending more events, getting outside. It's definitely exciting. And funny enough, the color palette I'm using in this piece is from a dream I had, so I hope you like it. After a big hibernation, it's always nice to have a little reminder of the good things in life and what we're missing out on when we stay in our homes and just create art. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's just good to get a variety, and I find that if I'm feeling stuck, like if you have creative burnout, for example, it's a great way to get a refresh and find some inspiration outside of your home. I'd like to say that an artist's battery charges from two ends. The extroverted side, where we're at art galleries, for example, and the introverted side, where we create. It's our duty to keep both of them charged as much as we can. Let me take a quick intermission to return back to the piece that we're making here. As much as I tried to make this piece work, I really didn't like the vase that I had put them in, and then I tried this laundry basket and I really wasn't liking it. Again, the vase wasn't right, or maybe it was the background. I thought that the background made all the colors blend. It was almost like too matchy, which I didn't really expect to happen. But as this is the junk journal, I just glued it down as fast as I could. So I'm going to return back to the white background and make a new vase. I collected a bunch of brown papers and wanted to make them look like they had a shadow effect. So I found light ones to dark ones, and then I wanted to make something a little bit different. Since this is an experiment, I wanted to play with cutting out pieces, ripping some, just doing a whole bunch of different things to make it look very unique. My goal with every junk journal page is to do something that I've never done before, and with this one, I'm doing a lot of different things that I've never done before. Like this one with cutting smaller strips and ripping them into even smaller strips, or cutting out flowers from a block of paper. Not to mention just the abstract style like this in general, I really haven't played around with that much. Right away, I could see why people love this technique. It was super therapeutic. I loved ripping the papers and figuring out where they went together. It was just so interesting and very different than the way that I usually create. There is definitely no perfectionism allowed when you go to rip papers like this or create a shape. Now, as I mentioned before, I'm feeling super burnt out and it really sucks. I didn't really see this as affecting me in my art, but now looking back and reflecting as I created, I haven't really truly been proud of anything I've made in a while. I'm not saying I don't like the pieces I've made. I really do like them and I loved creating them. But I don't think that there was like a creative fuse burst when I created them. There wasn't anything that was super innovative that hasn't been done before. If I look back at earlier works, I feel like I've made super clever comparisons. These days, I feel like I'm just in my escape girl era, I'm gonna call it. What do I mean by that? Not exactly too sure, but I think that I enjoy sticking women in places that they shouldn't exactly be in. If you were able to tune into my live stream last week, I stuck a camper van on the dining table, for example. I'm still working to complete that piece, but I do think it has a great base. I just really enjoyed putting people in other places, and I just wonder if there's a little piece of me subconsciously that's trying to tell me something through my own art, which is kind of interesting to think about. Maybe my subconscious has been telling me for longer than I thought that I needed a big change or a big vacation. And this segues into my next part of how to heal burnout if you're an artist. This is just my opinion, but I find that a lot of people that say that they're burnt out creatively are just overwhelmed with all the choices of things they could make while simultaneously not having enough time to do those things. Or maybe it's to do with overthinking an image and if you want to use it or not because you love the image, for example. I have so many magazines, dozens and dozens, maybe hundreds of them, and you don't see me ever creating with a lot of them. I like to work with about 3 at a time so that I'm not overwhelming myself with all the possibilities. Unless, of course, I'm looking for a specific image, like a giraffe, for example, I'm going to be flipping through a lot of magazines to find an image of that. And that's why the first thing I would recommend is doing a junk journal like this. Since we're collage artists and we don't really need to sketch to practice or paint like painters, this leads us to not practice like other art forms. When starting my junk journal, I was always afraid that I was going to make something really beautiful in it and that it would be in a junk journal. But interestingly, that has not been the case. I view my junk journal like a sketchbook. Nothing in it is meant to be perfect and everything is an experiment. I made this little book with my own hands, and every time I open it, I just feel so creative and ready to do something that I've never done before. As I said, I just highly recommend you start with a junk journal. If it's been a while since I last created, I definitely take the time to do this 15-minute rule. And that is to sit at the desk for 15 minutes with a timer and just create for those 15 minutes. I usually like to use a stopwatch instead of a timer. This way it doesn't go off after the 15 minutes, but you can check it. I often find the first time I'll look at the timer is at the 25-minute mark. It's usually that I've forgotten that the timer is even there and I was like, maybe I should put on some music, or came up with an idea for a video, for example, and I just want to jot it down. It's never because I don't want to create. If you hit that 15-minute mark and you're still not getting in the groove, it's totally fine. It means you've done your 15 minutes and that's more than just staring at a blank page. So I think that that's something to be proud of. And maybe take the time to do this 15-minute exercise every day until you make a piece. I think once this happens, you'll be so excited that you did it and that you'll want to create something else. A mentor once said this to me: "What or who is inspiring you at this exact moment?" During the pandemic, I found that I couldn't really answer that question, but now that I'm back in the real world, I feel like I have so many things that I could talk about. If you can't answer this question straightly, I think it's important to go out and go into the world. Maybe you're feeling drained. Although artists are solidarity in their work a lot of the time, it's important to get out there because that's where the inspiration comes from. There are two, if not more, very distinct things that artists need to do to succeed, and one of them is going out and seeing other people's work, maybe talking to people. I had the pleasure of talking with some artists that I'm super inspired by recently, and I cannot tell you how good it felt. Before I continue on my journey of things I think you can do, I also just want to point out that I think that this has to do a lot with the mentality that you're living in. Maybe it's time to have a conversation with yourself on a piece of paper and try to figure out what is the root cause of this. Or maybe it's time to restructure what art is in your mind. A lot of the time as perfectionists, it's hard to make art, and we get so overwhelmed by making something good that we make nothing at all. And this is good for no one. As an artist, we need to create to survive. It's like breathing. And without creating, we can't get better. I had a year in my life where I didn't create anything, not a single thing creatively. I wasn't even doodling on a paper, but I was learning other skills. As I reflected back from that chapter, I realized that I was just on the wrong path, and there was definitely a gut feeling about it. So maybe there's something similar for you in your life. If you're like me and need some reading material to prompt you on what these things might be, I highly recommend The War of Art. It's by Steven Pressfield, and I found it very helpful. I'm actually going to go back and read it again because it's been several years since I first read it. I've definitely seen mixed reviews about this book online, but from personal experience, I find that it's really good to read and write about the problem that you're having. People often look to books, articles, videos, and they look to solve their problems with like 5 top tips to solve art burnout, for example. But I find that always interesting because each person is so individual that I doubt that the same thing would work for every single person. That's why I'm hoping to talk through all the things that I've been through with it, and maybe something will stick for you. Now that I've blathered on for quite so many minutes, it's time to return back to the creation process. When I first put the pot on the left on the right side with the patterned background, I found it to be way too much. But now that I'm using these extra scraps on the background, I think that this is a really cool piece. I had only set out with the intention of making one side of this page, but it's so cool when you get to make 2 different things with the same pieces. I wasn't sure if I would have enough for 2, but I used the extra negatives as you see, and it worked out really, really well. This is only my first time ever working with this kind of abstract style, so I'm really proud of what I came up with. For next time, I'd love to incorporate more texture into the flowers, for example, but I wanted to ask you guys, what do you think of it, and what would you change? Thanks for dropping in to another junk journaling session. I hope you really enjoyed it.